let me set the agenda for today. What are we covering? We're covering 4 things. Yeah. First, what do consumers want from advertising when it comes to D&I? So what we've done here is we've put 2 kinds of lenses here. We have a rich database of all the creatives that we've tested in the past, and basis that we have tried to see how are the ads performing on D&I and diversity and inclusion from a short-term perspective as well as from a long-term perspective. Now, having said that, we all know that D&I is supposed to be very cool. Brands would want to do D&I just because it might reap many rewards, many recognitions for them. Yeah, but does it make business sense at all? Yeah. So we will have a look at that as well in terms of whether it does reap business awards or it does not. With that, we will also look at the opportunity pathways for brands going forward. So Kantar is globally invested in publishing the DEI country fact book. Yeah, we report facts and we analyze countries, 28 different countries on 8 different parameters of D&I. So let's look at what are these 8 different parameters. We evaluate them on the basis of age, gender, sexual orientation, race, ethnicity, physical appearance, social class, disabilities, and religion. So as per the Social Progress Index, what we find is that there is a big challenge when it comes to our nation on being inclusive. As a nation itself, we emerge to be in the lower tier of inclusiveness. Yeah, so there is actually a very big challenge as a nation, as a part of the culture, as a part of our community. We really need to. We're really at a very, very nascent stage, and we need to take there's a long way forward. So when you ask consumers in terms of what do they want from a D&I perspective, what do they have to say? Yeah. So half of the consumers feel that brands are not doing a good job of portraying their likes or people like them, like their communities, as compared to the 33% of the global number. So this sentiment is around 33% at a global level, whereas in India, Indians feel that, in India, it is around 48%, which is way higher than the global average. So in short, we need to do a better job of bringing diverse perspectives, featuring the underrepresented communities and all. So having said that, what do you get? Yeah? What are the consumers getting through our advertising, the kind of advertising that we are airing? So we'll play a small quiz here. We'll have a small quiz. I know you're not very familiar with the numbers, but we just want you to guess. Sorry, I think I just disclosed it. I'm sorry. So we go on. So basically, if you see, LGBTQ+, the representation of LGBTQ+, is hardly 1%. It's not even 1%. Now, if I have to ask you, what would be the representation of ads featuring someone with disabilities? What do you think the number would be? Any guesses? Yeah, you're very close. It's less than 1%. Now, we also know that globally, the average lifespan, if you see, has increased considerably. Yeah, so which means that there is an increased population of 65-plus-year-olds across the globe. But how many ads do you think feature older age group, 65-plus-year-olds? That's actually very close. It's 4%. So only 4% of the ads actually portray people who are 65-plus-year-olds. So basically, what we're trying to say here is that these numbers are abysmally low. Yeah? And there is a dire need to look at these numbers closely to make a head start. So now let's talk about the topic, which is very close to the Indians, the topic that most of us keep discussing, and that's the skin tone. Uh, we as Indians, we have variety of skin tones. Like here also in the audience, you see people with a variety of skin tones. But when it comes to advertising and when it comes to featuring women in advertising, we see that we are obsessed with the fair skin tone. So 58% of females are shown with a lighter skin tone compared to 25% of male counterparts. Now, when it comes to age representation, we see that females are usually portrayed as younger. Yeah, so you'll see females within the age group of 20 to 39-year-olds, but it is okay for men to be older, yeah, to be portrayed as older. Again, when it comes to being portrayed as very attractive, young and attractive, female characters are 2.5 times more likely to be shown as very young and attractive as compared to their male counterparts. So the portrayal of women usually is very, very closely anchored to that of a caregiver in the household. Can you guess what are the males likely to be portrayed as in advertising? Sorry? Can I have some adjectives? Breadwinner? What? Alphas. Yeah, that's very close. So basically, men are portrayed to be as more authoritative. Yeah. So, we have come a very long way, especially when it comes to talking about the binary gender. Yeah, but so if you see, nearly half of the ads today are featuring more progressive themes. The good thing is that the regressive codes are receding. There are only around 4% of the ads which talk about the regressive code, and what is emerging is a lot of more status quo codes. Now, when I talk about status quo codes, it's almost around 1/3 of the ads that depict status quo codes in terms of their emotions that they are exhibiting, the kind of gratification towards products, and the kind of dresses that they wear. Yeah. Then there are ads which are making way towards progression. Yeah, in terms of the way they dress, the kind of behavior that they exhibit. Yeah, where are they? What is the context? What are they doing? Then there are ads which are more progressive, which we call as the new normal slice of life. These are the ads where we see newer roles and newer perspectives for males and females. The good news now is that we do not have very openly, we do not have too many regressive codes in advertising today, but what still worries is the status quo, which still exists. Yeah, so now if I compare the non-Hindi ads versus the Hindi ads, you see that there is more conformance to and more adherence to the status quo codes for the non-Hindi ads as compared to the Hindi ads. Now, these numbers that we saw was from a short-term perspective. Now, looking at the numbers from a longer-term perspective, wherein we've evaluated around 6,000 ads over a period of 5 years, what do we see? That, across genders, the traditional roles are still dominating. The diversity of body type is still very low. So there is a lot of sameness quotient. There's a lot of similarity in terms of the kind of body types and the kind of the roles that we are portraying through advertising. So say for example, if I look at an ad which features a woman in a personal care category or in a beauty and wellness category, and if I look at an ad in the automotive sector and see how are they featuring women, they will be very, very similar, both in terms of the roles that they are displaying and also in terms of the body type. Also, if you see, there is limited representation of diverse ethnicities and religions. So there is only, so if you look at these numbers, there is only 2% of the ads which depict ethnic origins, different ethnic origins. Out of those 2% of the ads, also you have 28% which are only in the background. Yeah? They have characters only in the background with different ethnic origins. Also, there are only 3% of the ads which depict or portray different skin colors. And even amongst those ads which portray different skin colors, 24%, almost a fourth, is only in the background. So with that, I hand it over to Pallavi.
But is the news all grim? Well, we have some good news. When it comes to putting our minds to it, we do end up taking mighty strides. For example, gender presence in our ads is not an issue. We're actually performing better than global numbers, right? Uh, we have uh, we have men and women both prominently present in our ads, and we also observe that we have 2 times solo female presence in ads seen in non-Hindi advertisements relative to Hindi. And ads having the presence of both genders is also a very high number. So when it comes to global standards, we are doing pretty well, actually. So we have come a long way from what we used to see 2 to 3 decades ago. Now, we've been talking about mainstreaming of positive people portrayal, right, in advertising. In this section, we are going to attempt to answer the question whether it's worth it, whether there is a business case for it, right? And before I do that, I'll have to set a bit of context. So at Kantar, we are lucky to work with the largest advertisers in the country because what we do as a business is test ads. And we help advertisers and we help marketeers test these ads, develop them, help them fine-tune them so that they help them meet the objectives for their brand. What are these objectives? We know that every ad needs to break the clutter, needs to be remembered by the consumers. It needs to get into the mind space of the consumer so that it motivates the consumer to go and buy or try the brand, right? So it needs to have a sales uplift. That's the main objective of any advertisement. In addition to that, the long-term impact that an ad needs to have on the brand's equity is also very, very critical. So in our proprietary solution, which is Link, where we do the ad testing, we have 2 measures that we look at very closely to understand how the ads perform on this short term, which is a sales uplift objective, and on the long term, which is a brand equity metric. So one is the short-term sales likelihood of every ad, and the other is the brand power metric, right? Marketing teams end up usually considering these 2 metrics as the action standards for their ads because these metrics help us understand if an ad is going to make it, if the ad is going to give them the ROI that they're expecting from, when they put it on air. Okay. So while we understand how ads perform and what metrics we'll be looking at, we also have developed certain metrics that even Susan talked about in her talk, right? That we, in collaboration with the Unstereotype Alliance at Kantar, have developed 2 matrices to understand whether ads are positively portraying gender and inclusivity, right? So one is the gender unstereotype metric, which you see on the left-hand side of the screen. Here we understand how these ads measure on positive portrayal of males as well as females. So we ask them 2 questions, and we capture this in all our surveys globally. And we have been capturing this data for the past 3 years. So we will be able to look at this data closely to answer the question whether all this is worth it. And on the right-hand side, you see the progressive unstereotype metric. This looks at all the characters, not just male or female in the ad. And this helps us understand whether an ad is presenting people in a modern and progressive way. Okay? This has been captured for the past 3 months, so we'll look at results maybe next year. We'll look forward to that. Okay? Okay. Now let's look at some data to answer that question. So here, it's clear from this screen that we definitely have a business case for gender unstereotyping. Now let's explain how we have arrived at this case. So we looked at all the ads that performed highly on positive female representation and on positive male representation. Okay? And we looked at the difference between the ads that performed well on this metric and did not perform well. Okay? And how they ended up doing on brand equity and short-term sales likelihood. This difference tells us that yes, there is a high chance of impact, right? That if the ad is stronger on the gender unstereotype metric, it will definitely perform higher on brand power equity, which is the long-term metric for how an ad should perform, and on short-term sales likelihood. So we definitely have, it's clear that the ads that perform strongly on the gender and stereotype metric also perform well on short-term sales likelihood and PAR. And they have the ability to positively impact short-term sales and long-term equity for the brand. Next, we actually looked at some global data as well. So we didn't just stop at gender. We also looked at inclusivity, and we looked at our global link database for that. And here we saw something very interesting come about. So while we see massive results for inclusive advertising at a global level, we also observe that just presence alone is not going to get you that impact. If you want that impact, if you want that huge delta on your brand power equity and your short-term sales, you need to represent people in a positive manner. And these underrepresented groups, sorry? It's 4 minutes time. Yeah, okay. And these underrepresented groups need to be presented in a positive manner, whether it's age, whether people of different ages, whether it's specially abled people, whether it's different ethnicities. Yeah? So how I'll wrap up is by saying that these factors are probably some of the most potent in improving advertising effectiveness. So what kind of copy would you rather spend your ad budget on? Yeah? And very quickly, we look at some ways we can do this. We looked at a lot of content that's considered unstereotypical, and we came up with 3 ways that this can be done. Inclusive casting, inclusive storytelling, and inclusion as a purpose. What will happen is that this will be covered more in detail in the panel discussion that follows. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
So the message from Ritu's presentation is pretty clear that, if you want more customers, you have to ensure that they are included in your marketing initiatives, in your advertising. Ritu, over to you. Since we are reflecting upon some of the points from your presentation, we have seen some strides when it comes to representation of gender in advertising over the past many years. Now, when it comes to the larger inclusion agenda, something that we are discussing today, what is the roadmap? What are some of the steps taken? I know that you left the presentation there, but if you can elaborate on some of the things that can be done.
Yeah, sure. So basically, you just saw the inclusiveness continuum there when Pallavi was presenting. So there are 3 stages to it. in terms of the evolution that we see. So you can either do it through inclusion through casting, number two, inclusion through storytelling, and number three, inclusion as a part of the purpose. Yeah. So inclusion through casting. So it depends on the brand, your brand journey. Has your brand even taken on that journey or not? Yeah. So if you're planning to take on this journey of inclusiveness, then I think the lowest hanging fruit is, if you just latch on to inclusiveness through casting. Yeah, and when I'm talking about inclusiveness through casting, it's not just about, having a presence of that particular character in the ad. It is also got to do with genuinely portraying, being authentic, having an authentic portrayal of that character. Now, say, for example, if you have a woman who's working, yeah, in an ad, you can't show her cooking in the night. You can't show her, washing utensils. You can't show her mopping the floor. Yeah, so that's one. Then the other bit is on storytelling. So look at your brand. Look at the influencers that you have for your category, for your brand. What is the age group that, so say, for example, there is a particular age group that is an influencer for your category or your brand. Then in that case, you can adopt storytelling there. And when you adopt storytelling, you put forward the views of those minorities that have been, neglected, put their point of view forward in front of the larger audiences. Yeah, purpose is very difficult. In fact, marketers actually make a very big mistake. They think that inclusion through purpose is the only thing, and that's where they directly leap into. No, that's not the right thing to do, because purpose, adopt purpose only if it fits your brand. Yeah, not every brand can adopt purpose, because if you adopt purpose, it's a really, really serious thing. You will have to walk the talk. You can't adopt purpose and just leave it to advertising. It has to be beyond advertising. Say, for example, how are you treating your employees, for that matter? How are you contributing to the society? Yeah. Thanks.
Dr. Ranjana, over to you. First of all, your thoughts on some of the numbers presented during today's presentation.
I think basically, our culture, society, our democracy is about diversity and inclusiveness. So I think when you look at the way the research report underlines the progress in terms of diversity, is basically when we look at from gender lens, I think there is progression. You can see that we have moved on, the industry has moved on, not enough for us to be happy about, but certainly, there is, I will say, growing consciousness about what is happening. Secondly, it's very important to also see that still a very large area of the representation is left out. And you can see people with special ability, people from different language, culture, in terms of within the country, there are different cultures. You can't just say there is one single culture. And also in gender, and I think when we were discussing the report online, I did mention that is it only the binary that is men and women, or other genders included? So I think that's where we are really lacking in a big way. And report also very clearly indicates that. Other than that, I would feel that what is very, very important at this stage for the whole advertising industry to move into is to also purpose. I agree with you that, if you just look at purpose, then you are missing on inclusion and other issues. But I think purpose is very important, because when you are advertising, the power of advertising, we have to realize that, how powerful it is, not only in terms of you walking up to the product and buying the product, but also you are making up your mind about that. And I think that's the whole thing, that your thought process, your way of looking at life itself changes sometimes when you look at different kinds of advertisements. So I think purpose also can lead and can, work towards social change. It can, it should have some kind of underlining. I know that industry is not here to just look at this, but industry's responsibility is towards that also. And stereotype. Stereotype, very hard to break. I think Susan talked about, how difficult and how intensive the whole movement is to break the stereotype globally. But, it's important to see that when the society moves before you, when you are advertising something in a society has already gone beyond that particular image that you are trying to present, then certainly you are behind. And when you look at Indian society, it's moving very fast. Things are changing dramatically in certain sectors and certain things. So you have to observe that. You have to be really part of that, part of that change process, and B, also ahead of that change process if it is possible. You can lead the society towards that kind of a change. Thank you.
Dr. Ranjana, sticking to you, we have seen certain, certain development, certain improvement when it comes to gender representation, something that, I asked Ritu as well. But as we embark on this larger inclusion agenda, what are the learnings from there? Because let's say 20 years ago, women were shown in a particular manner. We are all familiar with all the Fair and Lovely ads that we saw on, TV, or, the Axe commercials that we saw on television. And that has changed over the past many years. There are certain brands that have come forward and spoken how, a washing machine is not catering to only one particular gender for that matter. So what are the learnings that we take or we can take from there and, apply it as we embark on this larger inclusion agenda?
You see, the whole issue at the moment is that it's not just how you present a woman, but also this whole gender stereotype, the way, the change is taking place. You have to really respond to that change. So what has happened, industry has not naturally changed. There has been a lot of protest about Fair and Lovely. There has been a lot of, women's groups have come forward. ASCI, I remember in its Gender Next report, has written very strongly about it. So there are these things that push this change for the industry. It's not just come automatically, naturally, that they started looking at it. Also, to just respond to your other question about, how this whole change is going to impact, I think there are responsible advertising, that whole campaign about being authentic, being responsible, and not just misleading people. A lot of health advertisements these days, when you look at them, a lot of advertisements which are coming without much scientific rationale behind those products that they are marketing, then this is really harming not only the belief in advertising, but also authenticity of the kind of products which are being advertised. So while gender stereotype is changing, is shifting, a lot of people are looking at women differently. Advertising is also moving in that direction. And also, I think responsible advertising is key to the whole of idea of advertising, I feel.
Sure, sure. Over to you, Kenaz. You're someone who's speaking to brand custodians, marketers on a day-to-day basis. First, I want to ask you, how forthcoming are they when it comes to conversations around inclusion?
So I can speak about the clients that I work with, and I've had a very good experience. I think, like she said, things are changing. They are understanding the value of inclusion and diversity and the impact it has on their brand. So I think that has definitely changed. Has it changed to the extent it should? I don't think so. I'll give you an example. The fact that she said we should not show a woman cooking at the end of a working day, very valid, and the client will be absolutely yes. But if you want to show a same-sex couple, they are still not that comfortable with that. So I think that we have made a movement, but I don't think we have moved as much as cinema has moved. I don't think we have moved as much as literature has moved. It's still baby steps, in my opinion.
Sonali, speak to us about your experience with corporates and how are they looking at inclusion?
Sure, and thank you so much for putting this panel together, and thank you, ASCI, for this wonderful event. It's been an enriching morning. I think a big applause to start this dialogue. Amazing work happening. To get back to your question, I think we are such a long way away when it comes to corporates, whether it is around employment, whether it is around representation. And we're not talking about a small number. We're talking about 150 million individuals in India who have some form of disability. And of course, looking at then the senior citizens in a separate light who will also have similar challenges. So we're talking about a large part of India which remains underrepresented. When it comes to corporates, very few offer jobs or offer opportunities to individuals with disabilities. One reason, of course, being the representation itself is so low. The kind of representation that happens, especially in the media and the advertising, is just not there, and therefore, what these individuals can do in terms of being a role model don't exist. So yes, a long way to go. I can tell you about one of our corporate experiences one of the partnerships that we are doing. We are one of the largest programs in employment of individuals with autism and intellectual disabilities. This is with Amazon Pan India. Can you imagine? There are about 10 million individuals on this spectrum. There are less than 100 people employed. That's the kind of numbers that we are looking at. And that's what we are trying to address. Today, with Amazon, we are able to do a pan-India partnership, looking at about 500 individuals in the next 3 years that we can employ. But it's such a small drop in the ocean.
Yeah, so building inclusive teams definitely will play a role when it comes to, representation of certain sects of consumers in the advertising.
Absolutely, absolutely. If you don't see them, they don't exist for you.
Kenaz, we have seen in real world, we are making such tremendous strides, when it comes to inclusion. What is taking advertisers and marketers such a long time to get on board?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. And even when I read the question earlier, I was thinking about, why are we taking so long? And it's because I think the results that they are responsible for builds a certain kind of fear in them. Not in all of them, but in quite a few of them, I've seen there's a certain kind of fear. And also, I was so happy to see the presentation you made because research is such an integral part of our business. And often what happens is when we actually show something very bold in an ad, it usually fails in research. It usually comes back to us saying that, your core target audience rejected this. 70% of the men did not like this ad. So maybe I feel and especially this is true for FMCGs because anything that comes out on an FMCG goes through a rigorous process of research. And maybe the more clients need to see this presentation and maybe the methods in which we research communication needs to change. I don't think we need to just ask them things like, do you like this ad? Do you not like this ad? Will you buy this product at the end of this ad? Maybe the questions that are asked to the consumers who see this ad before it is made have to be leading in the right direction. I think that will give a lot of confidence
And
to
also
clients.
cast a wider net when it comes to research?
Yes, exact. Cast a wider net, of course, but they probably will go to people who are most likely to buy the product. So let's say if you talk about a washing powder, then they have a certain target audience who buys the washing powder. But I think if you're going to show something inclusive, then the research has to be tailored around asking those questions. Because we want to lead the conversation in society. Our job is not just to reflect what is happening. Creativity can actually change the world. I believe that. And I think we should be doing more.
And, I understand the risk at stake when it comes to a super expensive 30-second commercial. But there can be a lot of experiments done on social media. But even when it comes to social media platforms, we've seen, the typical popular, mass-followed influencers, in a certain age group have been roped in by brands offering certain products that, their age group can't even afford to buy, for example. So, why can't that change? What are they like too scared to embark on, or go to an unfamiliar territory?
I think one conversation that definitely needs to change is every client comes to us and said we need to talk to the millennials and the Gen Z.
Correct,
You know,
absolutely.
and I think that, and no, and after saying that, I don't think they give enough credit to the millennials and Gen Z because they want more than just song and dance, you know. They can do with more than just the popular message. And I don't think a lot of brands realize that. We've been lucky to work with some brands like Dove, which have done powerful work around the world on changing the image of, women and their self-esteem. But I don't think enough brands understand that, what exactly needs to be done to win the Gen Z over. So I think that is, I just want to add one very important thing which she said on inclusivity. And this, I think, agencies are definitely not doing enough of, which is hiring diverse people. I think that is very important. Unless you have a working mother on your team, you will not be able to know that, you know what, why on earth would you show me go home and cook? Why can't we just order and eat? You know, unless you have a person with a disability, you will not get the message that says, I'm not even ever going to buy this shampoo because I cannot open the bottle.
Yeah, correct. Over to you, Ritu. What is holding clients back? If you can throw in some more light on that.
So I think it is purely the comfort zone, number one. Number two, there is a huge question and lack of confidence on whether it will deliver business results for the brand. What will happen to the image of the brand? Yeah. So there is a lot of work, daunting work that needs to be done if you have to make this change. Yeah. It's not just about, portraying such characters. As I said that, it has to be very authentic. You need to have genuine stories that integrate into the brand also very well. Yeah. The stories are good. Okay. But does it even integrate with the brand? That's an important, pertinent question to ask. Yeah, the other thing is that it will, it's like an establishment of an entire new ecosystem, yeah, new kind of models, new voiceovers, all of that. So a new ecosystem needs to be established. That again is a very, very daunting task. So you need to dare to take on that task.
Sonali, a lot of times also there is this feeling that, okay, some of the communities are really, really small. But if you look at it, they actually are, mostly data suggests that, they are big enough for your commercial interest, for that particular brand. So in that scenario, speak to us about your experience with corporates and how do they see inclusion become a part of the product?
So as I mentioned earlier, this is a large population that we're talking about. It's not a small population. A representation of those people in all aspects is very important. I think all of us sitting here are talking about advertising, which typically you look at a person who gets influenced as an adult. But look at what you're growing up to. You're growing up to textbooks which don't have a single representation, which still have stereotypical representations of women. I can give you an example of one analysis we had done around textbooks across India. And there's actually a picture of a mother, of course, cooking in a pink sari, sitting on a pink tablecloth, and the father sitting on a blue sofa reading a newspaper. I mean, this is ridiculous in today's times, but we've grown up to that. It doesn't happen. So all the people who are creating these advertisements have grown up seeing this.
And also cinema. Like we see
Everything.
a 50, almost 60-year-old actor romancing a 20-year-old or a 30-year-old.
Absolutely. So I think underrepresenting these populations is making them invisible, right? So whether it's corporates, whether it's their representation as an employer, or whether it's a representation as someone who talks about a product and who the consumer is going to be. If they are not your consumers, you're losing out big way. That's a huge audience that you're talking about, and they have the paying power. The families have the paying power to have it. And what a lovely example she gave you. If you can't open a bottle of shampoo, what is the point of creating something for a larger audience? You're missing out the entire pie.
Correct. Over to you, Dr. Ranjana. It's clearly seen that, advertising and advertisers play a role in shaping culture. And, we just discussed how, some of whatever we see around in pop culture, in cinema, in textbooks, is something that advertisers pick. But having said that, what are the three things, or what are the few things that you have that you expect out of advertisers going forward to be more inclusive in their advertising?
See, inclusivity as a principle also is good business because it impacts business very positively because everybody feels connected to that particular advertisement. I don't know if we ask the audience which advertisement really has stuck to your mind, what you think was one of the best, that we saw, and still I remember having seen that. Our generation people talk about a few advertisements, younger people will talk. So it's, I think, when you feel connected to something that has been told to you, you really respond well. So I think it's also good for society as well as for business. So that's extremely important to understand at this stage. And also, when we have to move on. A lot of sometimes things don't change because people who are sitting there do not want to make enough effort, and I think that's very clear. This Kantar study, I'm sure, is a kind of showing a direction that, look, this is how we are moving. If we move a little further, there's certainly things can change dramatically in the advertisement world. So I think it's important to, and also ASCI is, its leadership is showing very well here, where we are saying, A, that we need gender lens. When we are looking at any advertisement, B, we want to have advertisements which are more, reflective of authenticity. It's not just story, but story which is more authentic, real. There is some kind of a truth behind that story. And third, also, I feel very important thing about advertisement is about mental health. When you are advertising something and you're showing women in different light, or you're showing particular community in different light, then there is a lot of impact that happens on their mental health. Every young girl, if you go and secretly, she would be doing something to look fairer. Everywhere you see, and think of India, which is not just Bombay, Delhi, and Calcutta. India is two-tier towns, three-tier towns, and then the large segment of people who are consumers of these advertisements are actually in the villages of this country. So if we are not really looking at that population and we are not thinking how we are including them, how they are feeling connected, and how we are impacting. So lenses, I would recommend at least 3 lenses, if not 4, is these 3. The gender lens, you have to have diversity as a lens at everything that you do. Look at how everybody is included or not included, or how it is going to impact some people differently, And then also mental health is going to be one lens that I think all ads should look at, because a lot of young people are getting very influenced, and that's going to impact our society in the long term.
Yeah. Sonali, we discussed how, and what marketers should do. But if you can also give us an insight on what inclusive representation means on ground to people, to consumers, to communities.
So I think inclusive representation is, especially for people with disabilities, they don't exist anywhere, and therefore the disconnect to whether it's a brand or whether it is a print or whether it's media is very, very wide. When you don't feel represented between what you're exposed to all the time, whether it's a movie, whether it's an advertisement, whether it's the world around you, your exclusion increases. So it's the perspective that you're putting that person through. That person looks at themselves and says, hey, I'm not anywhere in this world. They're anyway experiencing exclusion from different members around them, but they're also experiencing inclusion from the world around them. So it becomes a double whammy for them. It becomes a space which is not a happy space for them, is not a space which is welcoming diversity at all.
Kenaz, I remember a couple of years ago, I think 4-5 years ago, Ogilvy had worked with Savilon to create the Braille packs, targeting, the visually impaired people in the country. How did that work? If you can, how did you work, first of all, with the brand, with the marketer on something like this? And what was the impact of it on the society?
Yeah. So I think the idea was come up, I mean, our team came up with the idea. And we typically, and the fun of working with a client like Savlon is you'll go to the meeting for presenting some script or something, but you'll end up selling a lot more and coming about. But they're very open. So when we presented this idea to them, they said, we love it. Why haven't we done it yet was the question they asked. And the second thing, which is what I love about clients, like you said, you have to be authentic. It can't just be tokenism. So they said, okay, we're going to do it. We're going to do it on all our packs of antiseptic, and we're going to do it in a big scale. Because what we realized is, that when you are hurt, the first thing you look for is a bottle of antiseptic. And it should be easy to find for everyone. And you won't believe it, it took them a certain time because they had to redo all the labels and everything for their product. But they did not come up with a special edition pack. They just changed it. I think that is what we need to do, and that is how you will get inclusivity to grassroots. If you do, as long as we stick to, we have a special edition, we have this, that's not change. So and they never even thought about, the cost it's going to incur, or, what is going to happen, or do we have to change all our labels? It took them the time to do it, but they approved it immediately, and they did it very, very sincerely, and they changed it for good.
Yeah, and after seeing this, any other clients or brands approached you to do something similar or, on similar lines?
So no, other brands have not approached us to do it similar. But after that, I've seen when I've gone that certain pharmaceutical brands, I've seen it on their product because maybe I'm looking for it or whatever. But other brands have not exactly approached us to do the same thing.
Yeah. So, some of the final thoughts I could gauge from this conversation is that with such a diversity or a diverse country that we have when it comes to religion, ethnicity, the kind of people, younger population, we can totally be, the torch bearers for D&I in our advertising and marketing efforts. But moving forward, how can this be done? If you can, individually share some final thoughts, Ritu, over to you.
We can do it through, taking very, very small steps. At least start showcasing maybe different colors, different skin types. You can do it through representing different age groups. We know that the elder age group, which is the 65 plus year olds, also have the propensity to spend. So, take those baby steps at least to start off with. Yeah, that's the easiest thing to do. And, obviously, it cannot just be, talking to 65-year-olds without any offering for them. There has to be a solid offering. It has to be authentic.
Yeah, Dr. Ranjana?
I think two things I would want you to pay attention to, which has been very nicely presented by the study. 1%, less than 1% for other gender, and especially and also less than 1% for physically challenged people, disabled people. I mean, physically challenged, or you can say differently able people. Why? I mean, what kind of, don't we have them included? And secondly, also pay attention to the business side of the whole story, that it makes better business sense. You do better in terms of getting access, getting people to respond to. So that's something with study, I think it's one of the most important, because after all, it's all about business, it's all about money, and this is making better business sense. So I think diversity and inclusion is making better business sense to business of advertising. If that is understood, then I'm sure things will start changing.
Yanaz?
Yeah, I think we need to be relentless. I think that is a thought that I have, and that is what I've always believed, that we are not going to be able to change it if we give up on the first conversation with the client or the second conversation with the client. It takes a little time, but if you see, and I'll give the example of Dove again, they have taken the message across the world now. So I think we need to be persistent. We need to be stubborn as people of advertising agency, and we should start the change within. You know, like I was giving you an example, when a working mom is in the room with the client telling her that, you know what, you showing me making a roti at the end of a working day doesn't work for me. So the client is more likely to buy that. So let's be inclusive in the people we take to the meeting.
Yeah. Sonali?
I think the only thought is to think about inclusion first and not last. It's not an afterthought. That's the first thing we should
Begin
think
with
about.
inclusion.
Begin with inclusion. I think that's the key. Have enough representation. Even images, photographs. We don't have enough banks of these. And I remember Manish also talking about it in one of the articles that she wrote. We don't have enough representation within the media to be able to even use images like these within the space. So how can we create these bank of images? How can we think about inclusion first? How can we think that any product that or any messaging that we're giving, everybody is a consumer?
Sure, sure. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us.